Can you imagine being fined for fishing in a lake your family loved for years, only to buy it and turn it into your private playground just to spite a power-hungry neighbor? That's exactly what I did. My name's Thomas Bennett, a retired real estate lawyer who cashed out my firm at 50 for a small fortune. When the HOA slapped me with a law 500 fine for casting a line in our neighborhood lake, they didn't know they'd picked a fight with someone who'd spent decades outsmarting property sharks. I didn't just fight back, I bought the lake, made it mine, and threw weekly barbecues that had the HOA board choking on their own rules. This is the story of how I took down a neighborhood dictator and gave a community its heart back. After selling my firm, my wife, Laura, a family doctor, and I settled in Silver Pines, a picture-perfect suburb with trimmed hedges and a glassy lake that called my name. Fishing was my therapy, a quiet escape after years of courtroom battles. For months, I'd wake at dawn, rod in hand, nodding to joggers as the sun rose. Life felt good until a crisp envelope showed up at my door. The Silver Pines Homeowners Association claimed I'd broken their rules by fishing an unauthorized activity. The fine? Law 500. I read it 3 times, thinking it was a mix-up. I'd been fishing since we moved in, and nobody cared. I stormed to the HOA office to sort it out and met Margaret Voss, the president. Her polished gray hair and tight smile screamed control freak. "Mr. Bennett," she said, voice like ice, "fishing doesn't fit the upscale image we're building here." She pointed to some obscure rule about needing approval for lake activities, slipped into the bylaws 2 years earlier without a peep. I argued there were no signs, no warnings in the handbook. "Rules are rules," she snapped. I left furious, vowing they wouldn't see a cent. I demanded a hearing at the next HOA meeting, laying out my case. Fishing wasn't banned, the lake had been a fishing spot forever, and their excuse was snobbery. A few neighbors nodded, but Margaret cut me off, refusing a vote. "The fine stands," she said, gavel down. As I left, fuming, an older guy caught me in the parking lot. "Name's Walter Crane, retired judge," he said, gripping my hand. "Been here 25 years. Margaret's running this place like her personal kingdom. You're not alone." He told me she was on a mission to ban low-class activities to jack up property values and might still hold a grudge from a case she lost in his court years ago. He nodded toward a young guy scribbling nearby. "That's Ethan Cole, local reporter. He's digging into Margaret's schemes. Worth a talk." My anger turned into a plan. I'd built a career crushing real estate bullies. This was personal now. With my daughter, Sophie, a law student, home for the weekend, we tore through HOA records, bylaws, and board member bios. Margaret, a former bank exec with failed mayoral dreams, treated the HOA like her empire. Her second-in-command, Ronald Pierce, a retired general, was obsessed with order. The secretary, Diane Walsh, loved gossip but had a son who, funny enough, fished too. We found the rule Margaret cited was added sloppily, without proper notice, breaking their own procedures. Then another fine hit Law 1000 this time, delivered by Ronald himself. "Comply, Mr. Bennett," he barked. "Mrs. Voss doesn't mess around." I grinned, filed it away, and kept fishing. Walter warned me Margaret was painting me as a rebel, hitting my allies with petty fines for things like unapproved flower pots. Classic intimidation, but they'd misjudged me. At the county records office, I ran into Ellen Sawyer, a land registry clerk I'd known for years. She checked the lake status and dropped a bombshell. It wasn't HOA property. It sat on abandoned land from a busted development company, unclaimed for decades. The HOA acted like they owned it, but they didn't. Sophie found records showing a hotel chain, Pinnacle Resorts, had been meeting with Margaret, eyeing the lake for a project. The puzzle was coming together. I fished again, making sure Ronald saw me. He showed up with a camera, snapping, "Evy Denke." I played nice, chatting him up, and learned his hatred for fishing came from a childhood trauma his uncle drowned on a fishing trip. Margaret needed a reason to ban it, he admitted. I gave her one. His honesty showed the HOA wasn't a monolith. Neighbors started whispering support. "My kids can't even swim there now," one mom told me. Laura heard similar gripes at the clinic fines for things like loud birdhouses or tacky shutters. Walter tipped me off. The lake was hitting a tax auction soon. "These things are hush-hush," he said. "You should bid." My plan took shape. If nobody owned the lake, I'd claim it. I called up Nathan Holt, an old colleague who lived for property deals. "You're crazy, Bennett." He laughed, but he was in. As the auction loomed, Margaret turned up the heat. Fines stacked to do law $5,000, and she threatened a lien on my house. My supporters got hit with nonsense violations. One night, as I fished, someone shoved me into the lake and vanished. Laura begged me to be careful. "They're desperate, Tom." I added security cameras and a guard for my fishing trips. Nathan confirmed the auction date and found out Margaret was dipping into HOA funds to bid, with Pinnacle in the mix too. The day before, a lawsuit notice arrived, accusing me of violations, served in front of neighbors to shame me. I just added it to my stack. At a late-night strategy session with Laura, Sophie, and Nathan, we learned Pinnacle's bid relied on Margaret's bad data. Auction day was electric. Margaret and Ronald sat up front, smirking. A Pinnacle rep tapped his pen nearby. Ethan Cole slipped in, pen ready. When the lake lot opened, I'd bid Dula $20,000. Margaret hit Dula $30,000. Pinnacle jumped to Dula $40,000. It soared to Dula $150,000, Margaret's max. She looked smug. I went to Dula $160,000. The room froze. Margaret paled. Ronald muttered she'd gone too far. Pinnacle pulled out, likely tipped off about her lies. The gavel dropped. The lake was mine. Margaret charged over, screaming fraud. Ronald stopped her. "You broke our budget, Voss." Ethan scribbled like mad. The Pinnacle rep mumbled about a deal, but I waved him off. Ellen later confirmed they bailed when they saw Margaret's shady boundary claims. That night, a block number called, a raspy voice hissing. "You'll regret this." I reported it and moved on. Within days I had the deed, fenced the land, and put up private property signs. I tore down the HOA's no fishing signs and added my own cameras. Margaret claimed my fence was ugly, but Nathan's legal letter shut her up. The lake was mine. She sent an inspector, who found zilch. She tried new rules to block me, but Walter and allies stalled them. Sophie dug up Pinnacle's plan to drain the lake for condos, with Margaret set to get a cut. To rub it in, I threw a barbecue, inviting Walter, Ellen, Ethan, and friendly neighbors. Margaret showed up, while vying legal threats. I handed her my deed and proof I'd cleared the party with cops. Walter warned her about false claims, and she stormed off, red-faced. The party rocked, with neighbors begging for more. I announced a community lake day, open to everyone but the HOA board. Emails poured in, spilling stories of Margaret's bullying. With Ellen's help, I planned a fishing pier and nature trail. Margaret fined partygoers for things like too many lawn ornaments, but it backfired. Residents got loud, grilling her at meetings. Ethan's articles exposed her Pinnacle deal, sparking fury. Diane slipped up, leaking emails showing Margaret's plan to punish troublemakers and funnel HOA cash through a shell company Sophie traced to her. Ronald, shaken, met me quietly. "This isn't about rules," he said. "It's her greed." He handed over financial records, and we pushed for an audit. Ellen confirmed Margaret's Pinnacle kickbacks. At an emergency HOA meeting, Margaret tried to dodge, but residents hit her with proof. Ronald exposed her secret spending and Pinnacle ties. When she tried to shut it down, the crowd roared her down. A vote for an audit and new election passed in a landslide. The Liberty Lake Fishing Festival, timed with the vote, was a hit. Local shops chipped in, news crews swarmed, and families packed the shore. Walter ran for president, promising openness. Laura ran a health booth, Sophie a legal table. Margaret showed up with a lawyer, threatening suits, but Nathan crushed her claims. She ranted about property values, but I pointed to the happy crowd. This is what community looks like. The vote kicked Margaret out, installing Walter's team. I announced a conservation easement, locking the lake as public forever, earning cheers. Margaret skipped town as the county probed her. The HOA reshaped, focusing on real needs. The lake bloomed with piers, gardens, and festivals. Sophie dove into community law, inspired by our win. One evening, as I fished, Walter joined me. Thought you were just a grumpy retiree. He chuckled. Glad I was wrong. I cast my line, grinning. Sometimes you buy a lake to save what matters and build a community to keep it.